Atheists, did you never believe in God, or what made you switch sides? No, never switched sides. My dad taught me to always question authority. Religion failed the test early on. When I was a kid, I guess I believed. Was told it was true, and had to go to church all the time. But, I was always suspicious. I'd ask questions and would get bad answers. And #X200B. Me, where'd the Bible come from? Them, God talked to some men thousands of years ago and they wrote it down. But he doesn't talk to anyone anymore. Me, so, we just have to take their word for it. What if they made it up? Them, they didn't. I was raised religious, but I never believed in any of it. I always thought it was silly when I was little and all the adults were just pretending, although I could never figure out why. I was always atheist as my parents weren't religious. I honestly feel lucky sometimes because I was exposed to a lot of different ideas about life and creation, and whenever I'd ask which was the right religion they'd tell me, there are a lot of ideas about what happens after death and how we came to be, but if everyone is being honest, no one really knows, so it's really just which one makes you happiest. I am sure I believed at some point, just like I believed in Santa Claus. At some point you start thinking critically, though, and realize it makes no sense. And I don't consider it a side to be on. Both of my parents were Sunday school teachers, but I found the concept of hell to be impossible to reconcile with the idea of a loving God. Switch sides. It's not really like that. It's more like walking away or feel compelled to go in another direction. At first, it's usually lonely. Anyway, for me it was a curiosity about other religions. I did a lot of research. This was pre-internet, on my own, and found the more I looked at all of it, the more obvious it became it was all made up. It's clear we created God and all the myths, and there's no need to adhere to those things any longer. I was never a believer despite being raised in a religious household. As a matter of fact, I remember being confused and slightly horrified when I realized that everyone else of my family actually believed in these ridiculous stories. Up until that point I thought it was like Santa Claus, a collection of stories and fables meant to encourage good behavior that no one really believed in anymore. Used to believe. Then I read the Bible. Realized none of this shit could be real. Then realized there was no supporting evidence for anything in there. And the God was spiteful, hateful, and promoted war as a way to resolve conflicts, and also supported slavery and sexual slavery of young girls. So I'm like, WTF. This God doesn't deserve worshipping. He's a monster. And realized there couldn't possibly be a God like that. I mean, he admitted creating evil. I used to, but ultimately over time, the whole concept began to dwindle in a result of its inconsistency. Always been an atheist, and never felt any reason to believe in something without any evidence. Raised Catholic. Not very strict though, and I only really believed the generals and didn't think about it too much. Then I found Carl Sagan and learned about skepticism and astronomy and figured out that the Bible was a bunch of old myths and tall tales, and that science was a much better way to understand reality. When I was younger I just took the religion I was raised with for granted. Then in my teenage years I learned there were other religions in the world and wondered why anyone would believe in them. I then realized they were just the same as me, simply taking for granted whatever they were raised with. And when I looked at them, including my own, with a critical eye to determine which was most objectively likely to be true, I realized that none of them really passed basic muster. So I just shrugged and stopped believing in any of it and went on with my life as normal. God according to the Christian Bible. Knows everything that is, was, or ever will be. 100% all-knowing. Created everything. Life, time, space, matter, all of it. So by this logic, God created us knowing full well that billions of souls would be condemned to spend eternity suffering unimaginably. Worse than the most agonizing suffering you can imagine for longer than you can fathom. Because he loves us. Went to a Catholic school where your first Holy Communion was a big thing, with a whole ceremony, fancy clothes, family visits and lots of presents. Everyone was Catholic, and I was only like 7 years old, so I didn't know any better. However, my parents never went to church other than baptisms, funerals and the like. When I reached the age of 12, when you are supposed to do your confirmation, I already had decided that religion was rather silly. My parents, as the majority of people at the time, didn't really care. So I never believed in God. Recently I made my own conclusion that religion is someone else's interpretation of events that may or may not have happened before they could be proven by modern science. This combined with the incendiary rhetoric of religious extremism, the exclusivity/elitism of churches, and the irrefutable evidence of evolution were enough to help make that decision. Edit. I have also learned that religion is more or less an institution and belief is something else entirely. It is telling that you phrase it as switch sides. I was raised Catholic. After reading the Bible several times I realized how self-contradictory it is. That led to the thought that the thousands of men involved in all the various versions, translations and interpretations may have had their own motives in mind. I never felt like I was choosing a side, just leaving behind another childhood fairy tale. Jesus would be appalled by the things done and said in his name. Or none of it was ever really anything but a way to control people. Same as figuring out that the myth of Santa Claus is a way to keep children in line. But in this case, people believe it their whole lives. Or at least pretend to. They certainly don't act like they believe it. I went to church and Sunday school when I was a kid and believed in God just as I assumed pretty much everyone else did too. But I remember one day, when I was about 9 after a science lesson thinking isn't funny that the teacher forgot to mention religion as the one exception to the scientific method and evidence-based learning. I kept thinking on that until I decided something somewhere was seriously amiss. I think by the time I was 11 or 12 I'd learned enough about history and science and other religions to piece it all together. Realizing that there are lots of other religions and everyone claims they are right, the more logical conclusion is that everyone is wrong. I was never indoctrinated into religion and I had an early love of science and developed critical thinking skills early. So no, I never had to switch. Yes, grew up fully Catholic. Started to leave church when I realized they twisted the words of the Bible to fit their agenda for omitting LGBTQ+. Once I realized that, I questioned everything they said, found they twist everything and really the Bible is hearsay. If you want to believe in something that cannot be proven by science, go ahead. Not for me. I need science. Honestly. I don't think I ever really believed in a higher power just from everything I've been seeing around me / on the news. It wasn't really until college did I stop to think, wait a minute, how does any asterisk of this make sense? I wouldn't say I'm an atheist, but I'm definitely not religious by any means. For me, learning about mythology and that ancient people really believed in their gods and not just, hey, these are good stories, kind of made me think, we think every myth is false except the ones we were told as children. What do you mean switch sides? Nobody is born religious. Everyone is taught. At a very young age I learned that religion is usually very wrong and that's the only side I've ever been on.